I see some people coming in. Welcome. I'm just writing up some notes for the chat. Because I do not have a moderator today, I'm just going to ask people to ask questions as they come, and then just trust that we'll upload any resources and such after. I always like to start on time, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I can't see anyone. All I can see right now is this screen, my PowerPoint. So I'll come in and out of my talking to see and check on any questions. And it's 12 o'clock, so I'm going to get started. Welcome everyone to my webinar called It's Not Just About Getting In, What You Really Need to Know About the College Application Process. I'm really happy you're here. I know we have people from all over the country who are joining today. Some will be watching the recording, some will be present, but I'm really happy that you're all here and part of our growing good humans parent community, all focused on growing good humans through these teenage years as they launch from high school to college and beyond, gap year, or whatever the path may be. I am Lara Barr. I'm the owner and founder of Emerging Educational Consulting. We provide one-to-one mentorship for students from the beginning to end of the application process. We are a village of teachers, writers, and coaches, all who work grounded in best practice educational pedagogy, which means research-based methods to guide students. We have become, over the years, it's so exciting to me to talk about this, really a one-stop shop for college planning, which includes essays, SAT, ACT prep, opportunities for students to engage in research and internship, and executive functioning for what we call solo expedition post-high school students transitioning to college. We have created a highly scaffolded process tailored for all kinds of learners, which include highly gifted to twice exceptional, students who have been diagnosed with ADHD, neurotypical. Really, the process that we've created is scaffolds everything into these tiny steps so that it just gets the job done over a period of time. I believe that the college application process is probably one of the most important and the biggest project a student will have in their high school opportunity, and that the process itself should be taken seriously as their capstone project of their high school experience. And through that process, there is this incredible opportunity to grow good humans. And that's what we wake up for every day. So my goal today for this webinar is to create some breath and to reduce overall anxiety about this process. I can't even open up any newspaper or any magazine today without something about the college application process. And I know for parents today, the stress around students not getting in or not getting into those top colleges, or will they get in, or is my student even prepared, has overwhelmed parents in so many ways. And my goal is to help reduce that stress by informing and empowering you with information and also some tips. So breathe, take a deep breath right now. I think I will too. Okay, so take a deep breath. My goal is to help you create a mind shift, to understand the scope of the project, to identify where you can help and where maybe you might not want to help, to give you some tools and some guidance on essays, testing, and deadlines, and ultimately to create a new mindset from shifting from this idea that you need to manage your team through this process to finding some simple ways to mentor them. I also would like to note for a second that I have 4 children who I have worked and navigated through this process. And I go back to all of the times I've went to webinars like this, and mostly they made me feel pretty bad and inadequate. What I'm going to be talking about today is like, here's the ideal, but every student is so different. And so I'm kind of going to present like, here's what it could look like, but there's going to be so many bumps in the road, and those bumps are more normal than having no bumps at all. As a matter of fact, if students don't have bumps in the road, they're probably not going to be as prepared in the future. So please remember that as I go through this. Why I spoke to this before, but why does this all feel so big right now? This whole idea of college and launch. Well, I think part of it is rooted in COVID, and that many of the students today who are coming through are students who had kind of that 2-year delay of both education and also social skills, some of that independence taken away from them. And I think that lag has an impact. And I think that we're seeing some of that stress come up now, while we're also seeing the application process become so intense. When I think back to when I went to school, I went to school in the 80s. I graduated from high school in 1985. Back in those days, the checklist was this: take the SAT, fill out a paper application, write an essay. I wrote my essay on a typewriter, licked the envelope, sent it in, and I was accepted. And most of my friends were accepted. Maybe some of my friends weren't accepted to the Ivies, but most people kind of got in where they wanted, and it just wasn't such a fuss. Now let's fast forward. Checklist 2025. In 8th grade, we have to start thinking of course of study, envisioning resume, planning activities, internships, writing 15 to 60 essays if students are applying to Ivies, understanding and practicing demonstrated interest. Well, what is that anyway? Filling out FAFSA, CSS profiles, and the list goes on and on. This webinar was actually born out of a simple question from a parent who asked me the question, do you guys have checklists? And I had to hold back from laughing because I was like, yes, of course we have checklists. And in fact, we have checklist after checklist after checklists. And I laughed and thought about when I created my curriculum, I used the philosophy of Abdul Gawande in his manifesto checklist, which was really addressing the issues that were happening in operating rooms around major mistakes not happening. And I feel like in the college application process, like we can't miss a beat. That application needs to have all of those checklists kind of perfected for us to have done our jobs as parents and students and consultants. So what I did is I went to ChatGPT and I started getting playful, and I was like, how many steps are there exactly in this college application process? And it gave me a whole bunch of lists, and it was okay. But then I decided to get playful. And when I got playful, it just started cracking me up. And I had this wonderful engagement where I created a blog that's called the 97 item college application checklist. And it is in my blog, and it's worth reading. I won't go into it right now, but it was just funny in the way that it was like, create a perfect course of study, but then find out none of the courses are available. It was like, write the perfect essay and then find out the prompt had changed. This is pretty much what this entire process is like from beginning to end. And I just wondered how parents must be feeling today, really just taking all of this on. And those parents who choose not to get or can't afford IECs, individual consultants who can help, or college counselors who in schools that aren't really available, and parents who are taking this on. And I really wanted to create a webinar so that I could give you some tools. So if you are taking this project on yourself, you have some tools to move forward. I think to understand the timeline, I'm going to explain the timeline in a little bit different of a way. It's kind of makes sense for me because I'm pretty attuned with child and adolescent development. And so when I think about the timeline today, that's very different than it was before, is that really we need to start thinking about the college application process in 8th to 9th grade. And we call that early expedition. And this is the beginning of students really being able to look inward, building these self-awareness skills, exploring how they learn best, identifying learning profiles, if that means they have ADHD or there's some things that just as 9th grade comes along, that there's some gaps, filling some of those gaps, really gaining and using foundational executive functioning tools. Middle expedition is that stage right between sophomore, junior, senior year, depending on the student, where students are starting to stretch outward. They're thinking about what am I interested in? What new challenges do I want to take on? What academic interests do I have? And some personal growth skills. Late expedition is the stage where students focus on refining their path. This is senior year, where they're committing to more meaningful experiences, clarifying their values, and connecting passion to purpose. And then solo expedition is post-grad, post-high school launch, when they're really stepping into the story that hopefully they've created. They're leading their lives with confidence, articulating who they are, and synthesizing their journey. Again, this is one of those areas where I kind of giggle, and I'm after raising 4 kids through this process. It didn't really look as perfect as this, but this was the target, right? These are the goals. So for early expedition, let's get a little more specific. 8th grade, freshman, sophomore year, building foundation for self-awareness, exploring identity, learning styles, and motivation, introducing tools for executive functioning and reflection, and sparking curiosity. The outcomes for us in this stage is that students really do have a 4-year course of study draft, that they have visited 3 colleges, a small, medium, and large. We're encouraging journaling, writing, expressing themselves verbally, some way or another, even if it means you're using conversation cards. I love these. I'm not sure if you guys can see me or not, actually, but I'm holding up my favorite box of conversation cards. It just happens to be at the top right now. It says, "What bad habits contribute to your unhappiness?" And there's just tons of these cards that I just used to keep on my dining room table, so that we started having those kind of identity questions. A lot of times students at this age are starting to separate from parents, and that is the normal thing to have happen, which is why we are a village of people who are trying to be there for students who are individuating from parents. But what happens in that process is sometimes parents and students aren't slowing down enough to be answering some of those identity questions. If parents start younger in 8th grade, 9th grade, asking these questions, we often get better results and often create a family culture. So that's why a family culture around asking guiding questions, or what I call more beautiful questions. So other things we want to have happening is students are building book stacks. They're listening to podcasts. They have audibles that they're listening to. They're getting involved in their community, maybe not alone, but maybe with a parent. I have a client who I just love this. They do a mother-son community engagement. I can't remember the name of it right now, but I'll post it. What a wonderful thing. Maybe the student isn't really ready to go out into the world to volunteer, but to do that as a mother-son event, I just loved that. Understanding their personality type. Are they using Myers-Briggs is what we use, but I think it's a pretty simple way. You can do it online, 16 personalities, talk about it, talk about having them being able to talk about themselves. If students have learning challenges, making sure that learning profile is really strong their 9th grade year, and that students are reading it and knowing their learning profile. For parents, the job now is creating some of those more young adult structures. Are we checking grades? Are we not checking grades? Are we making agreements about how and when we are checking grades? Are we beginning these ideas of this idea of students becoming financially independent? It's only 4 years before they're going to be managing their own funds in college, one way or the other. So thinking about structured allowances. When they run out of money, what happens then? What did the family system support in the family economy? I want parents to be thinking about students moving towards getting their driver's license. I want parents to modeling. What does goal setting look like for you as a parent? And how are you modeling goal setting and habit stacking? And if you don't know any of those resources or book names, we'll also offer that in the post upload of resources. But sometimes parents modeling making goals, setting goals, and honoring their goals and keeping their word models for students what that can look like for them. In our practice, we invite students to understand and know, what are your values? What are things that you want to, how do you want to show up in the world? What minutes do you want to create? I often say how you spend your day is how you spend your life. And so we're starting to think about, by the way, that's an Annie Dillard quote. It is my favorite quote of all time, because it really has people thinking like, I'm in charge of my life. My life is not in charge of me. So that is for early expedition. I think some of the tools that we start using for students to get organized executive functioning is for them to know how to use their Google email, their Google folders, their Google profiles. If they need elevated supports, there are all kinds of tools that students can use today. Asana, Trello. There's also executive functioning websites for students with ADHD. There's all kinds of programs that help students get reminders. Things like that, getting those going in 9th grade so that they're habits by the time they get to college. So middle expedition, we kind of see as, and really for us, it depends when the student enters our process, and also developmentally. Some students are just more motivated and ready than others. And so we kind of see this not as necessarily ages, but where they are in stages of their development. But middle expedition typically tends to be when students are beginning to deepen their academic engagement and skill building. They've been in high school for a couple years. Maybe they've had some hiccups. Maybe they've learned that, gosh, studying the night before the test at 3 a.m. isn't really going to work for them. They're getting some sleep schedules down. They're experimenting with their interests through clubs and classes. They've tried some, they've dropped some. They're engaging in summer programs. Maybe they're developing some independence. They're starting to show some time management. They're starting some goal setting habits, and they begin to start connecting some of those passions that they're developing to purpose. Now, don't get me wrong. I really don't love this idea that students are supposed to have passions. All I want them to do is to start caring about some things, not passion. It's too hard to ask every student to have some kind of burning passion. I mean, even as adults, we're trying to figure that out. But to be exploring ideas, exploring interests, and just trying some new things, I think is what I want to be seeing in that middle expedition. Outcomes for middle expedition would be they're getting and have their driver's license. They're securing jobs, internships. They're assuming roles in the community, not just volunteering. Maybe they're taking on some leadership skills. And also, I want to say again, different personalities have different ways of doing this. I mean, if there's some students who don't have leadership, isn't their thing, maybe they're finding quiet ways to get engaged. We have a program in Denver where we have students who are more introverted write letters to people who are maybe immigrants who are being held in a facility and don't have family. So getting letters, there's just so many different ways students can kind of assume those positions that don't mean they have to be experts or leaders. We really want them to begin taking self-advocacy with their educators and their counselors, meeting with their teachers after school, meeting with their educators, meeting with their counselors to start getting clear about what they want out of their college experience. We want them managing conflicts with parents and also with their friends. This is something that I've seen more and more, that students can get really sideways in their high school experience if they don't have the tools and skills to manage some of the conflicts that come up between queen bee girls or boys who don't get into, and I shouldn't even do gender. I shouldn't even be speaking gender. Like, for all humans, there's the cliques that students get in and out of. They're either kicked out or they've made a mistake that has them, their social capital not as high. Big mistakes like doing something in school that gets a detention or things like that. So I really want students begin taking responsibility. That often means parents engaging with therapists and school supports. These days I say therapists are like dentists. Like, we all need our teeth cleaned, and we all need our head cleaned out from time to time. And also being able to practice, learn those tools, and then to apply them to real life situations in sophomore, junior year is going to help empower them as they make that transition to college. For parents, the outcome for middle expedition is I want parents to start actively removing themselves from the checking the grades, from managing the social situations, fixing things when we want to, encouraging students to meet, parents encouraging, meet with your teacher, meet with your school counselor, providing mentorship for the college application process, actively participating in more guided questions when students are stuck. And I'm going to give a little example of that. But parents are still maintaining those boundaries, but they're also giving students opportunity to feel the consequences of their mistakes. Late expedition, this is always a fun stage for us. All of our middle expedition students are moving to late expedition right now, and we love seeing this, especially for our students who start in early expedition. Our late expedition seniors are pretty much rocking it out, meaning they are starting to take ownership. And our job is mentorship, but we're also taking a more hands-off approach and asking students to start building their own timelines for essays, their own timelines for meeting with regional reps, their own timelines using their calendar. We're talking to them about calendar integrity. What does it mean to say you're going to do something on the day that you do it and then you don't? You really didn't keep your word. So if integrity is a value, what are we going to do to renegotiate? So those are conversations we're having right now, and they're a little uncomfortable for students who say integrity is their value when they're not keeping their deadlines. We say to them, we're not here to get you in trouble. We're here to have you reflect on how do you want to honor your word if you say you're going to get something done. So again, this idea, they're starting to apply these insights to real world situations, and they're starting to take ownership of their personal narrative. They're engaging in deeper work, internships, leadership, or maybe creative projects. For every student, again, this can look really different. It can just mean going to a camp for the first time or being away from home for the first time. For some students, it just means getting a job. And that's a big shift from where they were in freshman year. So I think the other big thing for us in late expedition is the beginning of really talking to students about managing disappointments and denials, building resilience around disappointment. Because the college application process has gotten so competitive, students are going to be denied from schools unless they have a really simple college list. And that is quite wonderful if that's the case. But for our students who are reaching, which we encourage students to do, they're going to get disappointment. And how they manage that is going to be pretty important. We had a student a couple years ago who had really reached, almost all of her schools were reach schools. Against our advice, we've said, please at least put CU Boulder on that list. And she was adamant. She was like, I am going to go to all of these schools. And I want to get into all of these schools. And when she got denied from mostly all of them, she got into some of them, but they weren't her top choices. I remember her saying to me in a heap of tears and grief, she said, what was all of this for? And it really broke my heart in a way, because our job is, the reason we're doing all of these things is not to get in to college. We're doing all of these things because these are things that we do to grow as a human and to be a citizen on this planet. And so if we don't get what we want, it does not mean all of our efforts were for nothing. It means that all of these efforts have led us to a place where, gosh, now we have to be flexible in our thinking. We have to have an open mindset that maybe this college will be okay for me. And if I still want this college, then I have the resilience and the grit to do what I need to do to transfer down the road. And the reality is, this is what it is so important. We need to be teaching our kids this, because it is the likely scenario for students who are going to be reaching to some of the top 100 colleges today. So this is kind of that, like, what are the outcomes of late expedition? Is I want students are clear about where they want to go, what they want to do and who they want to be. And by the way, that does not necessarily mean they have to know what they want to do, like what career they want, but they certainly know at each university what they're going to be engaged in, because they know the university that they applied to so well that they know what they'll do when they get there, even if that's exploratory studies. I want them to think about who they want to be as a human when they show up. What contributions will they make to that school community? Will it be the same they're doing now? Will it be something else that they're going to stretch and reach for? These are the things we want them to be talking and thinking about. With support, we want all of our students to submit their applications early or on time. We want them to complete their high school senior coursework with integrity, not give up just because their college applications are in and maybe they've even gotten in, and to have a clear understanding of career options. Again, most students change their major. It's like 85% of all students change their major. So if we are not set in our practice on having students understand what career they want, but we certainly want them to have a major depth of thinking around what are the possibilities. And if they have interests like medical field, what are the hundreds of things students can do in the medical field? If it's business, what are the hundreds of things that they can do in the business field? Not just, I want to be in business, but what kind of business, and then today, with how complicated the career market is going to be, everything's changing so fast, we're really starting to think about interdisciplinary ideas, including engaging back into ideas around how liberal arts can fit into some career options in the future. So for parents, what I'm looking for in late expedition is that continued release of kind of command, and I want that kind of command and control parenting style. I think Alison Gopnik talks about, I might have her name wrong, talks about the gardener versus the carpenter. I mean, yes, the gardener versus the carpenter, right? So parents are gardeners. They're fueling questions. They're fueling the soil so that the individual students can grow. And they're doing that by being guides, mentors, and sounding boards, instead of creating ultimatums and fear in the process, which, believe me, I have done a lot of fear and and bribery in my parenting. So there's no judgment here. But again, this is the target that we're leaning towards. I mean, really, the whole thing that we're looking for here is goodbye nagging, hello independence. This is my new mantra on my website, and I just love it. We're moving from manager to mentor. And the ways that we do that are shifting our mindset from, did you do it? To, hey, do you need any help? Oh boy, you're falling behind, to, hey, do you want to map out a plan? How can I help? Why haven't you started this? To, hey, what's your plan to get started? What do you need? Who can I get to help you? What do you think? To, you need to finish this now, to, when do you want to finish and how can I support you? Instead of saying, I'm just going to do it for you, what part feels hard and what part can you handle? So sometimes kind of navigating and negotiating. I know for a fact that this sounds a lot easier than it is in practice, but I will say, for those of you who have students who are in 8th and 9th grade, if you start this kind of shift in mindset, and frankly, if I had middle school and early childhood people in here, I'd say the same thing. The earlier you start this, the better the practice. And most of the time, they're going to roll your eyes at you anyway and be like, I don't need your help. I don't need your help. And sometimes that means they have to learn how to fumble through and fail. And sometimes it means you have the responsibility of saying, in our family, if these things aren't getting done, then I'm probably going to need to provide some support for you, some guardrails, because I don't want you to completely fail your freshman year, whatever it might be. The whole purpose of why we do all of this is to launch our kids into the world. as citizens who can contribute, and we need citizens on this planet more than ever. And so solo expedition is when students are synthesizing their experiences into a compelling college experience. They're navigating their college placement with clarity and intention. They showcase growth and resilience, and they're using their own authentic voice. And they immediately start the process over again when they get to college for the post-college launch. This is something that we are teaching all of our students, that when you get to high school, the first thing you're going to do is go to the Career Center. Not the first thing. I say it like that, and then I say, not the first thing. Maybe after the second or third week. Get in with and start getting your internship for that following summer, right? And so in our services, we've started offering executive function services to help guide students to those places, because what we have found is that once they get into college, this doesn't end. This process doesn't end. They actually start over what they started with us in their freshman year. They're looking at their course of study. They're looking at how many credits they need to graduate. They're looking at what their activities and interests are so that they can continue to build their resume and add to their LinkedIn account that they made with us, right? So we're really just thinking what we are providing for them in this early, middle, and late expedition is the foundation of what they're going to do when they get to college, and then what they're going to do after college. So it's their first cycle of going through this idea of a big project, and a first cycle of figuring out, who do I want to be in this world? So I want to talk about essays because I promised that was going to be one of the outcomes. I think essays are one of the least understood for parents. Over and over again, when I do my intake calls with prospective parents, they will say to me, will you help with the essay? Well, the essay I think that they're referring to is the 650-word personal statement, the common application essay that all colleges mostly require. Well, today, that is one essay of many. There are other essays that are called supplemental essays, and those essays are additional essays that individual colleges may ask depending on the college. We call those supplementals. Most of them are questions such as, why us? Why do you want to come to my college? Another one might be, why major? And students have to answer this even if they don't know what they want to study. It may be a challenge I overcame. It may be, how do I contribute to my community? So all of those essays, for some students, I would say the average amount of essays students have to write is 15 to 20. For students who are applying to Ivy League, it's right around 40 to 60 essays, because we're building a balanced list. So they have, 8 to 9 Ivies, and then they have 5 or 6 target reaches, and then they have a couple likelies. I think one of the things about the essay process is I've seen more and more, and especially with ChatGPT, more parents getting involved in the essay process. And I'm not sure that I'm going to sit here and say that's not a good idea, because I also know it's a big ask. But I think if parents are going to get involved, I just wanted to say a couple things to help guide you. I really want parents to be think partners, not the authors, and not to do heavy editing. It actually will not serve you in the process. Admissions counselors see it, and they know when essays are too perfect. We want you to be their think partner, coaching them in the process, not crafting it. So encouraging timelines and revisions, but really letting them lead their writing. Maybe asking their English teacher or their school counselor if they can help. I think getting support from trained essay coaches we do this for a living, so of course I don't think it's a bad idea, but I think especially students who are neurodiverse and need think partners probably need more educator type focus to help students process all of those layers. If students are going to use self-coaching, I cannot speak highly enough about Ethan Sawyer. He is one of my mentors. He is my hero. He gives so many different examples and so many different exercises and so much support. His book is amazing. So that is such a wonderful resource instead of students just going out and doing it on their own or listening to YouTube or reading too many blogs. Stick with Ethan Sawyer if you're going to do it yourself. And then I also want to stress that the essay process for us is probably where the students have the most aha and awareness. It's actually in the writing where they find their voice. It is such an important process. And it makes sense if you think about it, and especially from an education standpoint. When students have to write an essay on why us or why major, it means they have to research. And when they're researching, it means they have to learn how to research, and they have to learn how to engage in websites, regional reps. And when they do that, they get a deeper understanding of what's being offered at that college and also what it is that they can do at that college. So it's such an incredible opportunity for students to literally have a turning point in their college search process. And we have in the summer before our rising seniors do these essays is when they really start owning their college list. They start owning their own research and they start taking responsibility for what it is they want out of their college. And it comes through in their essays because we've guided them through this scaffolded process. So I kind of say it is the turning point where students begin articulating who they are and what they're looking for life and in their own learning process. I want to summarize this by just pausing for a second and really taking in what these students are learning through this process, through ninth grade, through college. Again, back to this idea of this capstone experience. They're learning how to executive function, resilience, self-advocacy, identity formation, communication skills, agency and ownership. They're learning how to take perspectives, time management, adaptability, goal setting, growth mindset, self-reflection, grit, and follow through. And some students need more supports than others, but having a village of people help them be able to do that side by side with eventually a gradual release into that launch. All right, let's talk. I am going to stop this PowerPoint. I'm going to come in and see if you have any questions for me. So I am back and looking at the chat. If there are no questions, I'm probably just going to end the webinar. So I would love to have anyone pop in with questions, please. All right, well then let me show you. I'm going to just share a couple of things. I'll share the entire screen. So I'll share the entire screen. So if you have a chance to go to my blog and read this 97 item checklist, you can just humor me to look at it because it's so funny. And either I'm the only one in the world who thinks it's funny, but I just love this. Things like take the PSAT, decide if it matters. It might not. Research test optional policies like a conspiracy theorist with a whiteboard. Create your first college list, feel accomplished, then revise it 47 times. Plan a perfect college class schedule using the UC requirements. That's that's the California system requirements. Use the common data set, build a resume, blah, blah, blah. I mean, I just think it's really funny. So hopefully you'll have fun with it. And then also a reminder here on this community. This parent community was designed to support parents. We are here to answer questions. So if you ever have questions, if you're having a question, you're not the only one who has it. So please, in this community forum, you are welcome to comment on any of the articles that I post. You're welcome to introduce yourself and build a community with each other. We have so many resources for parents in this resources, and we also have tons of webinar archives. All of my podcasts are on my website. So any questions that you have or things you want to know about, if you just let me know, I will be happy to host webinars on topics that you really care about. So I will stop sharing. I'll check the list one more time. And otherwise, I'm just going to end the webinar and thank you so much for being here today. Have a great day.